Big deal.
If you would have asked me about my outlook on life a couple years ago, I probably would have responded along the lines of thinking it was some sort of walk in the park. My boyfriend Blake and I shared many interests, which is what ultimately brought us together. Our love for dogs and the outdoors kept us active and exploring. Every day seemed to be a new adventure, each one being more memorable than the next. We had 2 Chihuahuas, Bug and Bean, also known as the boys. The dogs couldn't be any more different than one another. Bean, being the quick and athletic one, was much more spunky than Bug, who was chubby and lazy. When we would take them to the park, Bug and Bean each had different intentions. Bug came to mark each and every tree that we passed. That's it. That was the only reason that he enjoyed any sort of walk. Bean, on the other hand, always cut right to the chase. He came to the park ready to play and get his use out of the time outside. Blake and I would laugh as Bean chased down dead dandelions that were blowing their seeds, or he'd run as fast as he could with no particular location in sight, and then come to a sudden halt and head right back towards us. 2 summers ago, we had the boys out for a walk. It was a beautiful day, the sun was shining, but there was just enough cloud cover where we weren't overheated. The birds were singing and the breeze was blowing. Blake, the dogs, and I were all loving the weather, and with summer winding down, we were planning to spend the day outside, enjoying the last of it. We walked and talked, and Bean ran up ahead, dragging his leash through the grass. Bug remained slow and moved at his own decided pace. It didn't take long before Bean got too far ahead of us, nearing an upcoming bike path. We yelled for him to come back towards us, but he was too distracted by chasing the blowing dandelions to hear anything that we were saying. At the same pace Bean was sprinting towards the path, a biker was riding down it, heading in the same direction to where Bean would be crossing. We both saw the series of events that were about to happen, but it all went so quickly before we could intervene. Blake and I were frozen in place, and we watched as the little brown dog crossed the point on the bike path right where the woman was riding. She squeezed the brakes on her handlebars so hard that I'm sure all of her knuckles had turned white. The woman slid off her seat from the sudden stop, and her legs managed to get tangled in the bars of her bike. She fell onto the path in what looked like slow motion, and her bike followed right on top. I saw the woman laying without movement and couldn't help but thinking the worst. We were stunned. Everything happened within the blink of an eye. I'm so glad Blake was along and was able to run to the rescue because I was absolutely no help. I was so embarrassed that my instant reaction was to turn around as if I never saw anything, and I started picking dandelions. So there I was in an open field, picking flowers as Blake fled to help this poor woman back onto her bike. As soon as things cleared up, I caught up with Blake to find out what she said and if she was okay. There's an old and I think pretty popular Geico commercial out there that I'm sure most of you have seen. A squirrel sitting on the side of the road runs across right in front of a car and causes the driver to swerve and get into an accident. If you can remember that commercial, you have a good picture in your head of what happened that summer day with Bean. Thankfully, she was just fine and able to laugh off what happened. Blake apologized numerous times, but Bean didn't really have much to say. We held tight onto the boys' leashes and busted out into uncontrollable laughter. We were still so mortified by the series of events that just occurred, but had to admit it was pretty funny. After all of that commotion, both of us agreed that life is much, much more than just a walk in the park.
Yeah, very good. But you did be